This is a very special episode for many reasons, mostly because it was an ideological battle I was having with myself about including it in the roster. I'm really careful about what I choose for all of you, as I want it to be quality and information that you can add to your practices and not a platform for sales pitches. So I'm going to quickly share my thinking process and why I finally sought out Elizabeth Medhurst, and she very generously agreed. She's one of the creators of Enterprise Adventures, to be on the podcast. And I want you to understand that I made the decision very intentionally and for what I think are very important reasons, mostly for all of us to stretch our thinking on what we can promote during the educational hours and what Elizabeth and her team have offered us. I was so impressed with this initiative from the minute I read their mission statement. But one of the factors that I wasn't crazy about is that it's filtered 100% through technology. However, and this is a big however, I'd really like all of you to listen to Elizabeth's explanation and decide for yourselves if the elements she and her team have founded the project on is absolutely vital for our students or not. What I mean to say by this is that perhaps we need to consider whether, through whatever means is being offered, our students are given the opportunity to develop those skills that are going to help them become productive and confident, either within or without the conventional professional model. And this app gives teenagers the opportunity to explore what it feels like to be entrepreneurs. That's really empowering, especially with all the different steps that Enterprise Adventure asks them to do. And more than that, the program asks students to explore their own passions, their own special gifts. They need to explore what's special about themselves so that they consider what they uniquely have to offer to the world. There is an element of monetization in the program, and that we need to question. However, they don't have to monetize their project. And even if they do, they have to go through a series of steps that have more to do with self-realization than economics. So again, perhaps, if we look past what seems like to be a sales pitch in the beginning, something I absolutely don't promote on this podcast. And on a very interesting side note, the creators have just sent me a message saying they've taken down the paywall, so it's now free. But you're going to hear that even when they charged for it, they were all in the ideology. They had scholarships, they had mentor schools supporting other schools. They really paid attention to the needs of all involved, and they wanted as many students involved as possible. Perhaps we'll see the core value of the project and how it's structured for the absolute benefit of the students and their future. Whatever they pick, being entrepreneurs or working for someone else. Let's see what you think, and I expect comments. You are going to see that I challenge Elizabeth many times on her decisions, and each time she responds not from a simple whitewash throwaway, but rather from a solid ideological foundation that finally sells me, very metaphorically speaking, on this project. See if the same happens to you, and if it doesn't, please tell me why. So let's listen to Elizabeth Medhurst and find out what this project is all about and why we need to consider the elements. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it because I was reading about your initiative, Enterprise Adventure. And essentially, it's an app in a mobile phone that students can use to become entrepreneurs, we could say. Is that a really brief and accurate summary?
Yes, I'd say that is an accurate summary. Over 3,000 students have used it to become real entrepreneurs. And from the age of 13 onwards, they gain the skills, whether that be creativity, financial skills, analysis, evaluation, speaking and listening, or even something such as empathy. They all tie into launching your own business. And you might not think that all those skills are useful in launching a business, but they will also help you throughout all of your life. So using things such as listening to customers' needs, analyzing your competitors, creating your profit and loss form, all of these will follow you throughout the rest of your life, and they're real life skills that are going to be useful not just in an educational situation, but also as you grow up into an adult and in many places you may not even have considered before.
All right. So I appreciate that as well, because there are a lot of the skills that you're talking about that are actually part of the list of the 10 most professional skills according to the OECD. But I'm just going to give you a little scenario. I'm a teacher, and let's just say I have the perfect class. I have students who participate. They come in on time every day. The parents are supportive and love the materials that I use, mandated by the district. My students do really well on standardized exams so that the administration is happy with them and happy with me. So why would I need anything extra if my students are doing so well and seem to be so productive in the classroom?
Good question. I would say that it helps them discover something new about themselves. So they might pick up things they may never have considered before. On a purely theoretical and educational basis, they may be going down a path that was set out for them through their curriculum. But by going out into their community and seeing what their community needs and talking to actual real people, flexing their creative muscles and understanding their own personal finances, plotting out their dreams for the future and comparing it after they go through the journey to what they want to do then, it all comes together in a way that they may never have considered before. So we notice there are lots of students who may be high achievers who are interested in the program because they think it's another feather in their cap. So it's good for their CV, it's good for university applications and so forth. But also, through going on this adventure, they really do discover something new about themselves. Many of them came up with quite traditional business ideas. So I want to run a bakery or a cafe or something like that. But by the end, by doing market research and analysis, they really discover the things that they're passionate about and how they can utilize them to make something that gives back to their community while also making them money and being self-sufficient. So they might be perfect students, but this teaches them self-sufficiency and how to really make that leap into the adult world.
So could you explain a little bit about how that comes about? Because I know that a little bit about the Enterprise Adventure app, and there are different missions. And in these missions, they learn different skills. And the highlights or the categories is discover, and then they identify, they investigate, they build, and then reflect, which I love. I mean, reflection is incredibly powerful. And then the last part of the mission is run. Can you tell me generally what the app helps them do in these missions?
So it's all broken down, as you say, into 6 phases. The first phase is a simple introduction. It's called Discover. First of all, they learn to look inward at themselves. What are they passionate about? What are their dreams? Are you dedicated to going on this adventure? And then they start to discover how that ties into the world of business and it being a sustainable, environmentally friendly, but also a business that has legs, can keep them sufficient for longer. In phase 2, they go out and identify their customers. That starts off with something very simple, such as interviewing a family or friend member. There are some students who might be a bit shyer, so they say, optionally, why not go and research websites? You know, they run their own business purely through a website, through an Instagram, for example, if you're doing art commissions or furniture or fashion businesses. And then they analyze their competitors. They see who do they need to beat. And at the end, they come up with a business name, they do brainstorming and a business category. Then they run into branding and financial forms. And finally, as you say, they do reflection. This was probably the most important part of the program that is right at the end. So maybe some students don't themselves know that it's a very important part that they're learning. But as you say, reflection is actually one of the core fundamentals of the program that we always had since the very beginning, since we launched it. And through that, they keep a learning diary. So they note down everything they do throughout the adventure. Usually it takes them about 6 weeks to complete all the missions. Now, some students may go a bit further if they really want to run their business. The run stage is optional. So some students, especially in poorer countries, may not have the resources they need to set up a business right now, but we encourage them to set up even a smaller version of the business they planned. So they might think, one day I want to make an app that helps disabled people navigate the city to find the best places for them. But I can't design an entire app by myself right now. So what I'll do is set up a website that gives special tips and maybe a forum that you have to pay to access. That's a business. Some students decide to do things like I couldn't want to set up a full environmental charging station. I can't do that right now, but I can make this solar torch in my spare time, and I can sell a few of those, and that puts me on the map. I might want to be an author one day, and I'm not really interested in business, but what I can do is self-publish my own book of poems.
All right, so you're giving examples of how they can actually become business people and entrepreneurs, which is what you said in the outset. And here's my question as I'm listening to you, because I just finished a business course, and it's the only business course I've ever taken. I've never been interested in business, but nowadays, if you want to sort of break away from the traditional path where you work for someone and you want to work for yourself, which is so possible, and what you're promoting, exactly what you're promoting, find your own passion and learn to, monetize it. But the beginning of the course was fundamental. It was a 12-week course, and the first 6 weeks was about self-awareness, and it was about looking deeper, and it was about connection and compassion and empathy. And how do we take all of that and then put it into a business? And for me, that was core. So my question here is, this is an app that they use on their phone, and it sounds like there is community, and I'd love you to explain a little more about the community. These are teenagers. Is there mentorship? Is there someone helping them look at this through the lens of a connected human body, people on the planet where we need to be empathetic?
We always try to stress that they're in a worldwide community, that even though it's an individual learning experience, that they are connected with hundreds and indeed thousands of young people around the world who are doing it at the same time as them, and they can always come to them for help and advice. So yes, they can come to us, the admins, as well, if they ever get stuck. But we encourage them to have that peer-to-peer sharing of ideas, which is something we've really seen a lot of on the online community. It's all moderated, so it's completely safe. It's, there's filters, and the moderation team check it. But we've actually seen some really amazing kind of ways that students have been helping each other out. So some people say, I'm not sure about my finances here. Can you check this for me? And people say, why don't you check out the masterclass for finances, or this link here? And some people say, I've just finished my logo, and here it is. And everyone gives each other like really lovely positive reinforcement. And it's just a nice sort of cross-cultural sharing of ideas and support as well. We've also seen how it brings students in classes closer together as well. So they have a lot of fun, just sort of comparing how far they've got as well.
How is this sanctioned by the schools? Because if this is something they need to pay for, how have you managed to sanction it?
Well, usually what we have a situation where some higher paying schools they are sort of paying for the lower income schools who cannot pay for themselves. So this is the sort of financial situation that we have. It's kind of
a partnership.
So schools that can afford to pay, or individuals per se, that sometimes find it and they have the means to, are propping up the schools that will never be able to do so. And for those schools, we give it for free. Or there might be schools that we know very well. We know that they do, good work, and that all their students are going to get a lot out of the program. But yes, it's sort of a reinforcement, and it's as you say, it's a cross-cultural sort of helping, and that's kind of our business model right now.
Yeah, it's definitely a business model. And I'm also taking a marketing course, it's similar. We support each other. But again, we're adults on this program. And I'm just wondering about the models for these students. Is there anyone monitoring the interaction so that you're sure that it's all appropriate?
Oh, yeah. So not just me, but, most of the team. So I always have to do it and check it every day. There is an automated filter system, but that's not going to catch everything. Thankfully, and some might say surprisingly, there hasn't really been any sort of, despite there being, 1,000 students on the program at any one time, there hasn't been any sort of mix-ups or, aggression from the students. It's all been remarkably positive. I was sure there was going to be a bit more competition and a bit more trolling, but actually there hasn't. I think it's because we generally have quite a good relationship with the teachers as well. So the teachers have varying levels of being hands-on or off. Some teachers say, all right, to the class, you go and do this in your spare time. It's an extracurricular thing. doing. Some teachers get very engaged and they sort of facilitate the course, say, how far have you got today? What mission are you on? And they're always checking in. So it's meant to be either way. So if some teachers simply don't have enough time, I used to be a teacher too, so I know that they're very busy all the time. We step in, the admin team steps in to make sure that no one is falling through the cracks. But yeah, it's also nice to see the students all supporting each other. You have, students from Nigeria being supported by students from India and vice versa. And these kind of children would never have met each other otherwise.
Which leads me to the next question. How are the materials tailored for different languages? I know in Nigeria, the English is very dominant, and in India, English is one of the dominant languages, and in other cases.
I have to say, at the moment, the Enterprise Adventure is purely in English. So our sister program is called the School Enterprise Challenge, which is based in schools. We also have a Spanish version for that, since that mostly runs in South America. And we are working on a Spanish translation of the Enterprise Adventure right now. We hope to have it up and running by maybe early next year. So we know that there are a lot of schools that from Spanish schools, speaking schools that we know, would be interested in it, but their students don't have the same level of English ability. We've also heard requests for French language speaking as well. That's probably the top most requested languages, but hopefully we are intending to get it launched by early next year. Yes, we have Spanish speaking staff here, so they're all making sure to check it all over. And everything has to be translated, not just the writing, but the mini games and the videos and everything. So it's a big ask, but I know it's something that people really wanted and requested. So that is one of our core deliverables, you might say.
All right, one of the elements of the app is that there are prizes, and I'm wondering why you decided to have monetary prizes at the end.
I think it just sort of helps to get their businesses off the ground. So we try not to hand out prizes just as a way to dangle a carrot in front of a student who doesn't really want to do it. Maybe they got halfway and a bit bored, but I'll just keep going in case they win the prize. But we try to reinforce it many times throughout the missions that it's the quality of your answers and the effort that you put in that really gains you the most from the program. It's an interior thing. It's what you learn from it and it's what you make of it. What we also see is some students who might sign up maybe because their friends did or their teacher recommended it. And at the start, you look at their answers and they might be a bit, why am I being asked about myself or my dreams, even though we know it's important? And then later on, if they keep going, they think, actually, I'm really getting into this. And their answers become more detailed. And that's really nice to see. We try to pick out those students and we try to contact them and encourage them early on. I think the sort of constant sort of feedback at certain points of the program really helps to get students engaged. So, for example, after brainstorming their business idea, they settle on, this is the one I'm going to plan. And we like to say, oh, that's been a really good business idea. You decided to knit sweaters, and that's like an amazing thing. You're doing knitting yourself. Well done. We want to see your examples. And the students are really happy to hear that. So yeah. It's very rewarding.
One of the items that you use on the page is that you want to create leaders, which is very important. So let's talk about the ideology a little bit. What for you is a leader?
A leader is someone, I think, who inspires others. So I'd like to think that our young people are going to go on to inspire other people, whether that be through business or making other people happy by the product or service that they sell, or simply by using the skills that they've gained in other aspects of their life to be a more empathetic and a more clearly spoken person who listens to other people, who thinks of new solutions to problems they may find, who perseveres through a problem. And that's the kind of leader that's really inspiring to me, particularly to see someone who doesn't give up, but also can teach other people and give them a helping hand. So they don't pull the ladder up with them and say, well, I've become a business leader, and I've got mine, so you can't get yours, but to help others. And that's really what the program is about. So it's about business, but it's about sustainable business. And it's about the education that you get through this adventure.
I go into schools and work with the administrators and the teachers and the students. And one of the best practices is promoting leaders who create other leaders so that the students feel empowered and they become leaders themselves. So here's a question, and I love how you explained what you believe a leader is, because you and I both know very well that the educational system that we're used to was structured to create perfect soldiers and perfect factory workers, which is wonderful if you want to be a soldier and a factory worker. But one of my goals is to give students agency. And it sounds like what this app is doing is encouraging students to learn about their own agency so that they can make choices in the future. So one of my questions for you was, this is wonderful because it teaches students how to become entrepreneurs. Are these skills, the skills that you were talking about before, you were talking about creativity and problem solving and listening and speaking and aiming high, are those skills that they can also use if they decide not to go into their own business, but rather work for someone else?
I think they are. I think they're skills that can be applied in any aspect of work, but also in your personal life as well. So yes, listening to other people, finding your threats, your own weaknesses, doing that interior deep dive. One of the things we do is, the SWOT mechanics. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. That's something that's, not just useful in setting up, I want a really successful business, I want to make money, but also, when you think about things like, okay, I might be going to buy my own house. I might want to, apply for this job instead. What are the weaknesses of it? What are the opportunities here? What are the opportunities and threats if I do this or that? And that sort of thing, learning to think critically like that is, I think, a very useful skill. It gives students a sense of perspective about the wider world.
And what I hear you're saying is something very similar to the business and marketing courses that I was taking. And really what they both say is look deep inside of yourself, find out what your passions are and what your strengths are. And as you say, what your weaknesses are. And the more we're self-aware, the more that we can make appropriate choices for ourselves. And so no matter whether we decide to do our own business or work for someone else, or both of those things, we can become more empowered people, and especially girls, because culturally, pretty much internationally, girls are not taught to be empowered and are not taught to speak up for themselves as often as boys are, and in different ways. And one of your data is that this is more popular with girls. So can you explain why that is?
Yes. So the program is used by 60% girls, and it's girls who often put a lot of effort in, who get to the last missions. I think there is a skew in girls winning as well, and I think that's because they use it as a chance to really express their individuality, to express what the things that they're interested in. They use it as a way to make themselves be known. And we've seen some really amazing examples of businesses run by girls. So we've seen some girls set up an entire new range of workbooks for poorer children in her community. We've seen one girl from Nigeria set up a female self-defense class, and, where girls from their school and other schools get together and share their problems as well. We've seen so many kinds of things where, yes, on an individual basis, they're learning these really important skills for the future, but they also come in contact with fellow students from their school they may not have known so well, and girls from many other countries too, who are similar to them in ways they may not have considered before. It's a sort of really nice way for girls to feel empowered and to, strike out on their own and do something that they might not have the chance to do so before.
Well, I'm wondering now if you're doing any tracking about what the girls do as the years to come. How long have you been up and operational?
So the enterprise adventure launched in 2020 as a result of the pandemic. Our other programs, which were done in person, couldn't be running. So we've been running it since 2020, and we have data since then. Generally, the gender split has remained remarkably the same. There's been kind of a fluctuation. It's been anything between like 55 to 65% in favor of girls, which I find really fascinating. And also there's a slightly different skews in different countries, and what kinds of businesses are put forward. So we do have a lot of data in that regard, and also the differing levels of how teachers are involved. if anything, teachers probably as a result of the pandemic were more hands off beforehand, but as sort of it's become more of a thing in their schools, they think, oh, yeah, what's all this? I'm going to get involved. I want to become an enterprising teacher. So some teachers also get featured and they think, oh, it's a chance to teach something that I've not been covering in the curriculum, but it does tie into what I do cover in the curriculum.
What I'm thinking while you're talking also is that I was just speaking with Surabhi Yadav, who's doing a billion reader initiative in India. And one of the reasons is because there's such a high level of illiteracy in India, and especially with girls and women. And so I'm wondering if this organization, if this app is helping girls feel, one of the other things she explained to me is that there culturally fewer opportunities for girls, or we could say fewer opportunities than boys have. They can go to knitting classes, they can become house cleaners if they want to, but they don't have a whole wide berth of opportunities. And what this app seems to be offering is giving them the world, giving them their dreams. And so is there anything about literacy or lower skills that is compensated by the app? That might be a question you can't answer, but just out of curiosity.
Well, we do try to keep it in mind that there are all sorts of students from many different countries, even if it is only available in English. They might have differing levels of education. So we try to increase the difficulty on a very, subtle format. It's quite a simplistic introduction. Some of the more advanced students might say so. They think, I know what a business is. Why are you introducing me into what is a business? Because some people, they might not have ever thought about that before. And then we do offer much more difficult, like optional masterclasses for the really hardcore students who want to know about, I really want to look at this big profit and loss form. I want to hear about graphic design. I want to hear about SEO and getting my business to the top of the search engine. So that's for, students who are really involved. But for students that need a bit more assistance, we try to see where they're registering from. And we try to keep track of their progress and give them more support from an early stage. So we have students from a place such as like Kenya. They might be in an area which doesn't have a lot of internet access to start with. And we try to pinpoint those students and give them as much support as possible. Through our scholarship initiative, we try to give any student who comes across it, who's between the ages of 13 to 19, the opportunity to apply for a scholarship. So they say, answer a few questions about their dedication, why they'd be good for the program, and they submit it. If it's a decent application that isn't just a spam bot, it gets accepted and they invited onto the program. We try to check in with those students and tag them appropriately so we can see their progress on a day-to-day basis.
So listening to the mastermind class, I have not been in one myself, but I know that one of the reasons I was never attracted to going into business and the mastermind is a little intimidating because that's where, as you're saying, that's where you get serious and that's where you get into the details of it. I was not attracted to the business world simply because as I was growing up, it was a masculine world, it was a patriarchal world, and it was a world where people were stepping on top of each other to get to the top. And so again, I'm going back to the fact that these are teenagers, and the projects that you shared here and the ones that I've read about do have to do with community. And I think that's incredible that these teenagers are creating their own businesses that promote community. Is there anyone in the organization that's promoting that, that's encouraging them to do that? Because I would hate to think that these teenagers are being encouraged to enter the whole world as I'm going to win no matter what.
Yes, we definitely don't try to teach them, oh, you must win no matter what. We always reinforce that a business has to be sustainable. It has to look out for the community. So not just the environment, but also the people, the workers they employ. They all have to be treated fairly. The customers need to be treated fairly. Even the competitors need to be treated fairly. So it's not simply about, I'm the best, I'm going to crush your rival business into a tiny cube. It's more, I have something to offer that nobody else does. I can show off my unique talent and I want to show the world this thing that nobody else has. And you can definitely see that in the results that we get, because it involves students thinking deeply about what they can offer the world, what's special about them, and how they can use that to support themselves.
It really is lovely. And what you're saying also is that what is special about themselves and how can they treat everyone around them respectfully, because they're gaining self-respect. So they're going to raise themselves up and treat everyone else around them with as much compassion as possible so that everyone can rise up together. Is that essentially what you're promoting?
Yes. So we definitely promote an empathetic approach to business, but not even just business, but in treating your fellow students from around the globe and in the future, the adults that you encounter, whether that's in a business situation or otherwise, with fairness and learning to put yourself across assertively, but not aggressively.
And especially the girls, because as we both know that girls are internationally not taught to be assertive. We're taught to be compliant. We're taught to think about the other person and more often than not, put their needs first. And it sounds like initiatives like this are helping girls see their own possibilities in a different way. So what would you like in the future, Elizabeth? What would you like to see in the next 2 or 3 years happen to the organization and happen to the participants?
Well, I'd like to see the students who have graduated, you might say, from the program have a greater influence on the current students who are in the program. So we're currently setting up an initiative to get back in contact with a lot of the Hall of Famers. We are in contact with them to an extent, but we really want their mentorship to come forward in a bigger way. And that will really show how this is a skill that follows you throughout your life, and you can help others by not pulling up the ladder, but by reaching down a hand. So that's something I'd really like to see more of in the future, this mentorship program.
I love the image, giving a helping hand. Is there anything that I haven't covered that you'd love for people to know about, for our listeners to know about? Because the initiative really is very broad. And yet I think the core here is that it's encouraging the students to look inside of themselves, find out what's special, and figure out how to make that blossom.
Yes, I would say it's a great program for all teenagers, no matter where they are. I would say go into it with an open mind, even if you think I don't want to be in business or, like I'm not interested in that sort of thing. But it's more of an experience, I would say. It's something that makes you think more deeply about yourself and also more deeply about the world around you. So I would recommend it to any teenager who's curious about the way the world works or wants to find a way to show off what makes them special.
And as you say, it really does build community cross-culturally and internationally. So it helps them be aware of what's going on in the world. Okay, I do have one more question about technology. What is essential in technology to be able to participate?
It can be accessed on either a desktop computer or a laptop or a smartphone. So usually we have 2 ways that our students access it. They might access it in their own time via a smartphone, or sometimes they use the school computers. So if you happen to have a desktop computer, I would recommend using that. But a lot of people don't have a desktop computer, so a smartphone is perfectly fine. But you do need to have an internet connection.
Is there any way to work on part of the program offline?
Yes, so a lot of the program is about simply going away and completing tasks in the real world or thinking about things, interviewing people, designing a logo and so on. You come back to the app at certain points to upload a photo or put what you've learned from your interview. So you don't have to do it at the exact same time. You simply have to save your answers and write them down later and go back to the app when you're ready to submit them. So through those ways, we've had students who might not have internet at home, but they bring in their answers to school. The school does internet and they put them in there.
Okay. Elizabeth, I can't thank you enough. This is really fascinating. This is so important because what you're doing is not just offering entrepreneurship, but offering a way for teenagers to become more self-aware and to gain agency in their school environment. And so it's an incredibly important supplemental use of our educational hours.
Well, thank you. I think so too. And it's just a very rewarding program to be on. And when you see at the end of each season, it's just something that really warms your heart. And we like to keep in contact with the winners and see what they go on to do. Some of them have published their findings in academic journals, and some of them have gone on to do other business ventures. And it's just very heartening.
Well, we're going to share all the links so people can find you. And then hopefully in the future, we're going to see your tracking of the participants, how this is affecting them in their more adult lives.
Yes.
So again, thank you so much for participating. And we're going to talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Donna. It's been a pleasure.
So what do you think? Every time I listen to Elizabeth explain the project, I'm actually more impressed with the very genuine ideology behind the design of her project. I think we become hypnotized by the message we get from society that we need to look outside ourselves to be financially productive. And it's an important lesson for all of us, and especially our students, to learn at a young age that there are many models of earning money. And one of those is following their passions and unique skills. So you've seen how empowering the initiative is for all the students participating, and for girls in particular, and the incredible community building businesses a lot of them have created. And hopefully you'll be inspired either to reach out to Enterprise Adventure, especially now that it's free and you can donate if you're able, or at the very least, incorporate some of these principles in your practice. So thank you so much for considering and appreciating Elizabeth's creation. And for other intriguing conversations like this, please go to Doorways to Learning with Donna. And for activities to introduce new information, check out scaffoldingmagic.com. In the meantime, have fun in your classes and at home, and see you next week for more.